This isn't the kind of story you expect when you think of vineyards and legacy. But I've learned that the most beautiful places can hold the quietest betrayals. We were halfway through dinner, one of those formal family gatherings my stepmother adored. Crystal glasses, folded linen napkins, imported candles that smelled like lavender and smoke. The kind of setting that makes you forget things can still go wrong. I was seated 2 places down from my father, Peter Ellis, the man everyone in Napa knew as a legend, the name behind Ellis Estate wines. And I'd spent most of my adult life trying to prove I was worthy of it. I'd just returned from Harvard. Viticulture and enology, top of my class. Before that, I'd spent 3 years optimizing operations at a mid-sized Oregon winery, doubled their yield, slashed overhead by 38%. Everything I'd done had been with one goal in mind, to earn my place back home. So when the moment felt right, I asked, quietly, respectfully, "Dad, will I be considered to take over the estate?" The clink of silverware stopped. A breath held at the table. Caroline, my stepsister, didn't bother hiding the smirk curling at her wineglass. She was wearing a pearl choker, and that smug, curated disinterest she always wore around me. My father didn't look at me right away. He dabbed the corner of his mouth with his napkin, as if I'd asked something casual, like passing the salt. Then, finally, he said it. "You were never meant to inherit this." I felt the words before I processed them. My stomach turned cold, like the air had shifted in the room. "You're not a real Ellis," he continued, still calm, still deliberate. "We took you in out of obligation. You should be grateful we raised you at all." I don't know what I expected. Maybe hesitation, regret. But there was nothing in his face. No flicker of guilt. No trace of the man who used to carry me on his shoulders during harvest. He'd just switched something off. The silence after was louder than any shouting could have been. He looked back to his plate like it was settled, as if my entire existence had been a clerical error. Caroline reached for the wine bottle and poured herself a little more, humming softly. I sat perfectly still. I didn't cry, didn't argue. I just tried to breathe through the tightness in my chest. They'd let me build a life around a name they never intended for me to keep. All the late nights in the vineyard, all the degrees, the strategy memos, the business plans I'd drafted, in hope. None of it had ever mattered. Because I wasn't one of them. Not really. The will had already been written. Caroline was the heir. I was something else. A kindness they'd extended. A stray they dressed in Ellis silk for a few years. That night, I learned something that would follow me into every room for the rest of my life. You can give your entire heart to a place and still be nothing more than a guest. I didn't go back to New York angry. I went back quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean surrender. It means strategy. I hadn't signed anything the night of the will reading. I left the Ellis estate with a polite nod and a carefully controlled smile. But inside, something had split open. Not from heartbreak this time. Something colder, something more precise. 2 days after I returned to my apartment, a package arrived. No return address. Just thick, hand-addressed envelopes tied with navy ribbon. My grandmother's handwriting. I opened it and saw the first page of a trust agreement. My name listed as sole executor. I read it 3 times before I believed it. Thukkin. Trust owned 51% of Ellis Estate Holdings. Not just the vineyard, but the land, the event spaces, the branded lines, and most importantly, the family foundation. All of it tucked behind a wall of legal shielding my father never even noticed. There was a handwritten note attached. It said, "They never saw you, darling, but I always did. This is yours now. Do something better with it." I sat there for hours, rereading it in silence. Then I got to work. I contacted her attorney, an old-school Manhattan trust lawyer who'd been waiting for my call. He confirmed everything. The will they'd shown me? A forged version. The real one had been quietly filed and sealed months before she passed. It gave me full financial authority. My father was never even named. I hired a forensic auditing team and brought in a corporate law firm I trusted from a previous venture. Within days, they began to unravel what had really been happening at the estate. And what we found? Fraud. Deep, arrogant fraud. Millions funneled out of the foundation into shell companies. Beau's signature on every wire transfer. Phony nonprofits that didn't exist. Restoration projects that were just money laundering schemes. And Charles, my father, had either signed off blindly or helped structure it himself. I didn't scream. I didn't show up at their door. Instead, I quietly pulled every string they didn't know I held. I filed for an emergency injunction on all pending land use permits through the holding company. Every expansion deal paused. I froze the foundation's operating accounts under the trust's oversight clause. Staff were told it was pending review. And I began contacting key donors, journalists, and community leaders, one at a time, confidentially, professionally. A few of them were shocked. Most weren't. Inside the estate, they thought it was just red tape, bureaucratic nonsense. Caroline posted on Instagram about technical issues. My father called in favors. Nothing moved, and they had no idea why. But I did. For the first time, I wasn't trying to be accepted. I wasn't begging to be part of their story. I was rewriting it, and they hadn't even noticed the pen had changed hands. At first, it was just whispers. A fundraiser abruptly canceled. A local paper asking quiet questions. Then a major donor pulled out, citing concerns about financial integrity. Still, the Monroe estate pretended nothing was wrong. They always did. Reputation was currency, and denial was their favorite investment. Then the auditors showed up, the IRS, the State Board for Nonprofit Oversight, even a private investigative firm hired by the county. And suddenly, the Monroe name, once uttered with reverence in this town, was being whispered with suspicion. Then came the lawsuit. A developer Charles had been negotiating with filed a formal complaint. Fraud, misrepresentation, breach of contract. The land deal was tied to Beau directly, his name on documents, his signature on the fake environmental clearance forms. It made the front page. Full-color headline. Monroe heir implicated in real estate scandal. I didn't say a word. Let the rot surface on its own. I knew what came next. Pride doesn't age well in panic. Sure enough, I got the text from my father's assistant 2 days later. Charles is requesting an immediate family meeting. Attendance expected. Expected. That word made me smile. I didn't reply. I just showed up. The family's private boardroom looked the same as when I was a teenager. Oversized chairs, heavy wood table, oil portraits lining the walls like judges. Caroline was already there, fidgeting with her bracelet. Beau looked pale. My father stood at the head of the table, pacing. When I walked in, the room went still. I was dressed in black. No makeup, no expression. Just a single folder under one arm. Charles looked at me like I was a problem he hadn't solved yet. Glad you finally decided to join us, he said, all tight civility. We're under attack. Someone is spreading misinformation and destabilizing the estate. I took my seat. Slowly. No one's attacking you, I said. You did this yourselves. Caroline scoffed. Beau muttered something about betrayal. Charles raised his voice. Do you have any idea what's at stake? This family, this legacy, is under threat. And you show up here with attitude and silence? I opened the folder. This is the legally filed will, I said. The one our grandmother signed. Not the one you waved in my face over dinner. I slid it across the table. Here are the trust documents showing my controlling interest in the Monroe Holding Company. Land, assets, the foundation. All of it. I've been executor since the day she died. They froze. Then I dropped the last stack. These are financial records. Wire transfers to shell companies, donor money funneled into private accounts, political contributions in exchange for land zoning, traceable to both Beau and you. Charles turned red. Beau looked ready to vomit. You're bluffing. Caroline hissed. You wouldn't risk destroying us. I looked her in the eye. You already destroyed yourselves. I'm just turning on the lights. My father slammed a fist on the table. You ungrateful little parasite. We gave you everything. And now you want to tear it all down out of spite? I didn't flinch. You asked me to sign away my name, I said. Instead, I'm restoring what it used to mean, before you tarnished it. They didn't speak after that, couldn't. The story was already with the press, the donors, the board. I didn't need their permission to act. I never had. I left the boardroom in silence, folder tucked under my arm, steps steady. Behind me, the house I grew up in, the one I was never meant to inherit, began to fall. And this time, it was on my terms. The fallout came fast. Beau was indicted. On multiple counts: wire fraud, misuse of charitable funds, falsifying legal documents. His mugshot made the news, but there was no press conference, no statement from the family. Just silence. A fall from grace so public it didn't need commentary. The Monroe Foundation was placed under federal oversight. A full audit was ordered. Tax-exempt status suspended pending review. As for Charles, he wasn't arrested, but his name was everywhere. Patriarch oversaw years of mismanagement, the headlines read. He was stripped of all authority, his board positions revoked. His face, once a regular feature at galas and ribbon cuttings, was now met with distance. No one returned his calls, not even his allies. And me? I got to work. I met with estate attorneys and conservancy planners. I transferred the majority of our undeveloped land, thousands of acres, into a protected trust. No more luxury villas, no more backdoor deals. That land would grow wild again. I sold off the private jet, the vintage car collection, the vacation homes that had sat empty while staff went unpaid. The money went straight into rebuilding the foundation, from the ground up. This time, it would serve real people, scholarships, agricultural programs, community grants, not another monument to a name. At first, people didn't know what to make of it. Then they started reaching out. Former vineyard workers, old family friends who'd drifted away years ago, staff who'd kept their heads down for too long. They didn't ask for handouts. They thanked me for seeing what no one else had dared to, for doing what needed to be done. And that was enough. Weeks later, I got a message from my father, a single line. Could we meet? Just talk. The bench, if you're willing. The old garden bench had been my grandmother's favorite spot. She used to sit there and sip her coffee, always insisting the view was better from that angle. I agreed. When I arrived, Charles was already seated, shoulders slightly hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered, weathered, faded. I didn't know how far it had gone, he said quietly, eyes fixed on the hedge. I let things rot. I know that now. I didn't respond. He turned toward me. Did you ever hate me? I paused, not because I didn't have the answer, but because I wanted to give it space. No, I said. I just finally loved myself more. He exhaled, maybe expecting forgiveness. Maybe realizing he didn't deserve it, I stood, straightened my coat, and looked at him one last time. I wish you peace, I said, but I won't carry this anymore. Then I walked away. Behind me, the estate stretched out in every direction, changed, but still standing. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing on my own land. Not because it had my name on it, but because I chose what it stood for. He asked me if I ever hated him. I said no. I just finally loved myself more. Thanks for listening to my story. If it hit home, or if you're carrying your own version of this kind of pain, you're not alone. Drop a comment, share your story, or just say hi. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new one. More quiet power, more justice. One story at a time.